Thanks for having me, everybody. And it was a pleasure to meet you, all of you. It's a pleasure to see those who are in a breakout room. Let's go to the next slide. So today I wanted to do two things. One, I wanted to give you 8 rules of success for your internship in government and politics. But I also wanted to give you 8 rules of success for building a career in politics and government and public service in general. I want to talk about how people use their internships to start a career in public service and what you can achieve in that career. Next slide. So we'll start with myself, right? This is my name. That's my personal email, and that's my cell phone number. It's probably not smart to give that away to all of you right now, but I want to open up the door in case people have questions after this speaker session, to be able to reach out, to feel free, comfortable, and feel free to reach out to me and ask questions and build that network and build that community of support. There's 2 main themes I want to touch on today. The first main theme is how difficult sometimes these jobs can be and how you can never get demoralized. I know some people on the call today have great internships in front of them for the summer. Some people are still looking for that next internship, looking for that next step. When I graduated college, I graduated with an art history degree, as all of your parents can tell you, and I can tell you firsthand. Art history degree gets you nothing in life. It'll get you no jobs after college. And so I spent the first 3 months out of college desperately seeking for a job. And so my first job out of college was SEIU International as a labor organizer. They reached out and said, hey, why don't you come organize Jamaican immigrants with us out in Western Massachusetts? I didn't know what that meant. I don't know what that entailed. I didn't know if I had the skills for it. So I took it upon myself. But it was the start of a great career. The next theme I want to touch upon is the amazing things you can do in a career in public service and government. My job right after SEIU International was to work on the Mayor Ed Lee campaign. They called me out of the blue and they said, hey, we have a guy here. He has a funny mustache and he's a little short, but he could be the first Asian American mayor of a major city. Do you want to work on the campaign? And I jumped at the chance. I packed up, I moved across the country and moved to San Francisco and immediately threw myself into that campaign. An incredible experience. And I want to say that if you dedicate yourself to a career in public service, you have the chance to make history. Those of us who worked on the Mayor Ed Lee campaign can always say that we were responsible for helping elect one of the first Asian Americans of a major city. And no one can ever take that away from us. We are part of history. And that is a thing I hold dear. After Mayor Ed Lee, I worked for Assessor Recorder Phil Ting as a confidential aide. That is a fancy word for scheduler. After that, I was the San Francisco Association of Realtors Deputy Government Affairs Director. That is a fancy word for lobbyist. And now I lead public policy at the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce on behalf of the business community. Next slide. This all brings us to Rule 1. Rule 1 of your internship and your career in public service is to always know the answer to this question. Why do I want a career in public service and politics? You have to be able to wake up every morning and answer that question for yourself, to find a motivation to make this job meaningful. I'm going to be honest, there's not a lot of money in public service, and the hours are long and the people can be difficult. And so it's not something you do because there's a lot of glamour and glory in it. You do it because it's meaningful to you. You do it because you are compelled to do it, and because you know the answer to this question. Why do I want a career in public service and politics? Do I want to change the world? Do I want to support my community? Do I want to do something really meaningful and leave a legacy in my city? If you can answer that question, you're already set up for a great career going forward. Next slide. Rule 2, a public service career is a lifestyle, not a job. And that lifestyle starts with your internship. I'll give you an example. I was very happy in Western Massachusetts, organizing Jamaican immigrants, eating jerk chicken, unionizing people, getting people good jobs and good wages. The Mayor Ed Lee campaign called me out of the blue. It was 3 months away from Election Day. They had just started a week ago. Every single competitor, and there was 15 competitors, had started 2 years earlier than they had. And they were desperate to find anybody who would work on their campaign. And they said, could you pack up today, hop on a plane in 4 hours, and come and work in San Francisco? And I did. I did because I knew the answer to that first question. Why do I want a career in public service? Because I want to help get Asian Americans elected into higher office. And this was my opportunity. And so you have to be able to embrace that this is a lifestyle. And if you want to do amazing things, and you'll have the opportunity to do amazing things, you have to commit yourself to it. And if you do, you'll be part of history. Rule 3. Rule 3, don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk. It's hard to say. The people that you meet in their internship this summer and going forward will be people you work with your entire life. Your entire life. There's a panelist on here today, Jason Tenko. Jason and I have known each other for probably a decade. The last time we saw each other was 4 years ago. I didn't know he was going to be on this webinar, right? Out of nowhere, we find ourselves on a webinar together today, right? And the last time we saw each other was like in Washington, D.C. back in 2010. And so it's something to remember that if I was a jerk to Jason Tenko 10 years ago, and I really hope I wasn't, but if I was, he would remember today and I would really be paying for it. And so don't be a jerk. Be nice, be kind to everybody. My last thing on this that I'll say is that, one of my jobs for Mayor Ed Lee, my first job for Mayor Ed Lee was to drive around his wife, the First Lady of San Francisco, Anita Lee. And when I asked how I got that job, it was the best job I had ever had, best job I've ever had, driving around Anita Lee. They said, well, you smiled a lot and you didn't talk a lot. And that was it. And that's sometimes how you get the job, by smiling a lot and not talk about. People are like, well, that seems like a nice person. We'll go with that guy. Rule 4. Rule 4, do not be a diva. Do not be a diva. My job after Mayor Ed Lee was working as a confidential aide for Assessor Recorder Phil Ting, who's now a state assembly person. As I said, a confidential aide is just a fancy word for scheduler, right? And a scheduler is a really grueling and demanding and very unglamorous job, right? When you think of schedulers, you are like, no one gets into politics to schedule for somebody else. But in an elected official's office, the ranking of power goes chiefs of staff, then scheduler, because the scheduler manages the elected official's time. And there's nothing more valuable in an elected official's office than their time. And so as a scheduler, I got to get everyone's contact information. I got to talk to people I would never normally talk to at a very young age. I got to deliver for my elected official day in and day out. I got the most face time out of any staff with Phil Ting. Phil and I talked hours every day on his schedule. And it was because I was willing to do that grind out work that I was able to get the access and the kind of quality of contacts that I was in that job. If I was to say, oh, I'm a diva, I only want to work on policy, I don't do scheduling, I would never have that opportunity. Don't be a diva. Rule 5. Relationships come from work, not business cards. I often go into these rooms. I used to go into rooms before shelter in place. I used to go into these rooms and see interns networking the room, throwing out business cards like they were ninja stars, right? Like everyone was like a Naruto character, just like tossing them at people. I cannot tell you how incredibly annoying that is, and also ineffective. Just because you handed someone your business card does not mean that you made a connection with them, does not mean they will remember you, does not mean that they care about you. The business card, in the end of the day, is only a piece of paper. A relationship that you want to build is through work. And so volunteer, be consistent, be proactive, be helpful to everybody that you meet. And the more that you work with people, the more they know they can trust you. And then they will think of you for that next job or that next opportunity. Relationships come from work, not business cards. I know there's a bunch of folks here who don't have internships this summer. They're wondering what they can do. Go out, volunteer on a political campaign, volunteer for a local nonprofit. That work that you show up volunteering day in and day out, that's what's building a relationship for you. That's what's going to open the next door. Rule 6. Next slide. Rule 6, don't worry about first impressions. Do not worry about first impressions. I know this is like reverse of everything everyone's ever taught you, especially other Asian American nonprofits, perhaps even this one, right? Do not worry about first impressions. Consistency is key. I cannot tell you how many interns freeze up because they want to deliver that perfect first impression, or they try too hard. They come off thirsty because they want that perfect first impression, and nobody cares, because you're just an intern right now. And so no one can remember you off that first impression. But consistency is key. If you show up every day and you're great and you're polite and you're nice and you're smiling and you can do that day in and day out, that's what people are going to start to remember. We used to say in San Francisco City Hall, it's not the first meeting I'm in with you, it's the 5th meeting I'm in with you. If you can show up 5 times and introduce yourself to someone 5 times, and be consistent and nice and meaningful and authentic in that experience. That's what's going to make a deep and lasting impression. That first impression, people meet hundreds of people every day. They don't ever reach back out to them. It's about getting a consistent rhythm with someone to build a relationship. Rule 7. Words are like water. Too little will hurt you. The right amount will lift you. Too much will drown you. I used to have this. This was a saying that Anita Lee used to tell me all the time. If you don't ever speak, no one's ever going to hear you. No one's ever going to remember you. It will hurt you. If you talk too much, it's really annoying. It's incredibly annoying to see people who talk too much. And so you really have to temper yourself, especially in an internship, especially early in your career, to figure out what is the right amount to say. And words are like water. Water is precious. Make sure every word you say is meaningful. Make sure every word you say is necessary. That doesn't mean to ever speak, to never speak. If you never speak, no one will ever hear you. That's not what we're saying. But we're saying make sure you're tempering yourself and measuring out how much you should be talking in any given circumstance. Let's do rule 8. Expect the unexpected. This is public service and government and politics. Crazy things happen all the time. Sometimes they're very visible. Crazy things, right? Like a 2016 presidential election. Crazy thing, totally unexpected. But sometimes they can be very minor and unexpected things. Something that you thought you had put on your calendar, and there was a meeting that you thought you put on your calendar and you just forgot, or there was a glitch and you totally missed that meeting. You have to be able to expect the unexpected and pivot quickly and be prepared to catch that and move the ball forward. This is politics. Anarchy and chaos is built into this process. And so you should learn to roll with the punches and always be composed. Never lose your temper, and never lose your temper, and never be reactive. Always be composed. And so expect the unexpected. Like I said, I was union organizing out in Western Massachusetts, doing my thing with SEIU. A phone call came in. Do you want to work on the Mayor Ed Lee campaign? Can you leave in 4 hours? Can you be here tomorrow morning? And no one expected that, but it was a great opportunity. And because I was willing to roll with the punches, I rolled right into it. And so that's what you have to be able to do. That's rule 8. Next slide. COVID-19 tips. So listen, everybody, this is a really crazy time. This is just a very weird and odd time for everybody. And so I thought I would provide 4 tips to help you all kind of get through this and think about how you can really be impressive and useful during COVID-19. The first one is content is king. Content is key and king, right? But let's not make it gender. Content is key. There's no way for you to show your superior right now that you can go into the office every day, be really nice and polite to constituents, answer the phone really well, and just wave hi at the elected official. There's no FaceTime that you can have right now. What you can do is write really compelling memos or emails. What you can do is be very good on Zoom and be very presentable when you are in front of them. And so content is king. The better content, the better writing that you can put out right now, the better impression you can make, because that's all they see. Treat every email like it was the most important email that you're going to send out right now, because that's all of the impression they're going to get from you. Second, response times are everything. Response times are everything. We used to have a rule. Emails have to be responded in 24 hours. Text messages have to be responded within 15 minutes, and phone calls have to be taken immediately. Right now is a time where when people reach out to you, they expect you to be there, right? Like that, because you're not doing anything else. You are not doing anything else. You're not in a meeting. You're not walking around. You're in your house. And so be responsive. Be right there for them. If your boss needs you and you can show that you can be there in real time as they need you, you are gold. You are gold. 3, check in early and often. I cannot tell you how much is on the mind of your elected official, your director, your superior right now. There's a pandemic, a global public health crisis. The economy is in a tailspin. There are Black Lives Matter, right? There's a huge moment in police reform and police accountability that's happening, and racial justice. And there are protests on top of that, right? So there's social issues, there are physical issues, there are health issues. they're dealing with so much right now. You are at the bottom of their list. That's not to be offensive to you, right? You're just naturally going to be at the bottom of their list. Your job is to move yourself up to the top of their list. You do that by checking in early in the morning, on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and asking how you can be helpful, how you can take things off their plate, what you can do better. So as an intern, you always want to check in with your superior. But during COVID-19, it's even more important that you're proactive and you stay on top of that and you hold their hand. They don't know in their minds what they can give to you, what work that you're able to take on. So suggest to them the kinds of work that you can do to be helpful. Be as proactive as you can, and the better you will be. 4, become amazing at Zoom. This is not a commercial for Zoom. You can use GoToMeeting, Ring Central, whatever you want, right? But whatever video conference software you're using, be incredible at it. Because this is, again, the only FaceTime that you ever get with your elected official or your director or superior is through the tiny webcam that you have in front of you. So this is my spot. There's a giant window in front of me. This wall is white for a reason. This is where I do all of my video conferencing because I know I have to make a great impression. The lighting isn't perfect, right? I have a little foundation on, you can't tell, which is the point. Be amazing at Zoom, be incredibly presentable, take it seriously. The better you are at it, the more it'll come back to you. Next slide. Is this the right career? I want to bring this up because this is something that I hear from interns all the time, right? Whenever we used to run an internship program in San Francisco, we graduated like 120 interns. Many of them went to go on to work for congressional leaders, state assembly members, state treasurers, et cetera, et cetera. We're all very proud of them. One of the questions that we're always asked is, I'm trying to figure out if this is the right career for me. So I ask people to answer 6 questions. The first question is rule 1. Why do you want this career? What is the deep and meaningful and powerful thing that drives you forward every day? Is it changing your community? Is it changing the world? Is it pushing forward an issue? Is it in the environment? Is it whatever it is, racial equity, whatever it is there something there? For some interns, they're very honest and a little scary. And they're like, well, I just really like power. Okay. That's also an answer. That's totally fine. I'm not here to judge you. As long as you know the answer to that question, right? Those people who are like, I just want power. You're probably better at this game than I am. But you have to know the answer to this career. If you don't know the answer to why you want this career, you will find yourself demotivated and lost. The second thing is, do you believe that you can make change? If you believe that you can make change in the world, then this is a great career for you. If you're someone who's kind of a fatalist about the world, like things happen and I have no control over it, it just is what it is, this is not the career. This is a career for people who want to do things and make an impact on the world. So think about, are you someone who believes that you can make an impact on the world? Because with this career, if you dedicate yourself to it, you can. The next 4 questions are this. Is money important to you? Is stability important to you? Are weekends important to you? And do you have a high fear of risk? If the answer to any of those is yes, you should just think about it. This is not a job. You won't be impoverished in this job, right? You're not going to be out on the streets in this job. But this is not a job that comes with a ton of money, right? I have folks who I went to college with. Again, I was an art history major, right? So no one I went to who was in my major made a lot of money. But there are folks who I went to college with who now make a ton of money. I am not one of those people because this is not a career with a ton of money. Now, I have a very comfortable living. It's a good middle-class existence. But if money is something that's really critical to you, if you want to be a millionaire, a billionaire, you might want to look somewhere else. Stability and weekend. This is just a job with a lot of long hours. And that's okay. It doesn't mean there are always going to be long hours, but there are stretches of long hours. When we joined the Mayor Ed Lee campaign, again, like I said, it was 3 months away from election day. Everyone else had started 2 years ago. They had huge leads built up on us. But we really felt like this is something we needed to do. We worked 140 hours a week. It's possible, because we measured it one day, And we did. We worked 140 hours a week, which means you sleep about 4 hours a night. Now, we did that only for 3 months. So that was like a crazy thing that we had to do. I called my partner, I called my family, and I was like, essentially, you're never going to see me again for the next 3 months. And it's okay, because we are going to go out and make history. We're going to go out and make history, but you're not going to see me for 3 months. And that's going to have to be what it is. But we did it. We worked 140 hours a week for 3 months, and we got the first Asian American mayor elected. And that was really meaningful to us. You just have to be okay that sometimes that's what it is. That doesn't mean I haven't had to work 140 hours a week since that point in time, but it was like, you have to be ready that sometimes that's what it means. And so just be prepared for that. Just know that that's something that may come up in your career. Maybe it won't. And if you're not, you're very lucky. So don't worry about it, but just be prepared for that. And the final part, there's a high degree of risk. I think that we're raised sometimes believing that failure is not okay, that losing is really unacceptable. The people who are here that are on this call, you're very proactive, you're very bright, you're probably very successful already, you're probably used to winning. In politics and in government, it is inevitable you lose. That's not because you're a bad person or you're incompetent or you did something wrong. It's just sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. It's like sports, right? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It depends on the issue. You have to be okay with that. You have to be able to accept that and accept that as part of your career. Sometimes you don't win the mayor election. Sometimes you don't get your legislation passed. Sometimes you don't win the debate. That's just what it is. That doesn't mean that you did a bad job. That's just the natural balance and flow of the world. And so you have to learn to accept that in order to succeed in this career. That's a hard lesson for folks, especially at the beginning. And so the earlier you can kind of embrace that and just feel comfortable with that, the better on you're going to be. Next slide. This is my favorite slide. This is the reading list. They asked me to send you a YouTube video and article to read before this session. I asked my wife. My wife used to work for the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed. And we came up with these five books, which is not helpful at all. It was not a YouTube video or article. So I apologize to the organizers for that. I want to go through them just very quickly and talk about why I think they're worth reading. All of these are incredibly long books, by the way. You should get them on audiobook, which is how I do it. The Best and the Brightest by David Haltren. This is, Obama used to call this one of the most life-changing books in his career. This is the book that he thinks about. The Best and the Brightest talks about the administrations of John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson and the Vietnam War, and how some of the brightest minds in America created one of the country's greatest tragedies, Vietnam War. It's also a great look at inside of how a government works, how you staff an elected official, the kind of ideas that you have to address, and how, again, sometimes you can be the smartest person on the planet and still lose. You can be the smartest person on the planet and still make terrible judgment calls. And that's not to say that you did something wrong necessarily. It just says that sometimes circumstances are built up against you. This is a great book that kind of examines that and looks at that. And I've taken a lot of it throughout my career. It's kind of a dark book, I'm going to be honest, but it also paints a really interesting picture about how people for generations have gotten into government. We think about, like, how do people become secretaries of state? How do people become cabinet secretaries? How did they get that job? And why do Asian Americans not get that job? This book tells you why those people get those jobs, because they went to the right schools, the right elementary schools, they came from the right families, and it shows you the kind of institutional racism that is built up against Asian Americans and all people of color and Black people and indigenous people from getting into government and positions of power. Very interesting book. Second book, The War Room. The War Room tracks Bill Clinton's political campaign, starting from the New Hampshire primary all the way to election day. This is 1992. In particular, it doesn't track Bill Clinton, which it tracks his political strategists. It's a documentary about his two top political strategists and how they dealt with the controversies, and it was a very controversial election. Bill Clinton got in a lot of scandals during that time, how they rolled with the punches. It's a great documentary about understanding how a political campaign works, how the attitude and the mindset that you have to bring to a successful political campaign, and also, again, how to roll with punches as they come, how to expect the unexpected. Which brings us to the third book, What Happened by Hillary Clinton. A great book about how to deal with the unexpected. Another great book about how someone who is incredibly qualified, intelligent, and bright lost through maybe no fault of her own, and how you grapple with that loss and how you understand that loss. And I think that's a great book because inevitably that will happen to you in your career, maybe not in your internship. I hope not in your internship, but in your career, in whatever career you're in. And it helps you understand and kind of walk through that. The fourth book, The Power Broker, Robert Moses and the Fall of New York by Robert Caro. I brought this book up for a couple of reasons. One, it's the only book about a Republican. The other three books are about a Democrat. It's a long time ago, so Republicans kind of meant something different back then, but it's about a Republican. Second, it's the only book here about local politics, not national politics. Robert Moses was not an elected official. He was a city department head. He managed the Triborough Bridge Authority. He managed a bridge authority. And yet from his position as a obscure city department head, he reshaped the entire cityscape of New York. He essentially built what New York City looks today as a parks commissioner and as a bridge department head. And I think it shows you that there's a lot more in politics than just the national level, that you can really make an impact on people on the local level. And you can really define what people's lives are on a local level. I think we have a moment right now around police accountability and racial equity. And a lot of those discussions are about cities and counties and states. They're not about the federal government. And so it shows that sometimes the most impact that you can make is by being engaged in your local city, in City Hall, and not in the White House, and to think about that. And so Robert Moses, The Fall of New York. Also, if you're ever interested in urban planning, this is the definitive urban planning book. This is what they make everyone read in Masters in Urban Planning. It also is about like 4,000 pages long. So you can read it until your eyes fall out. The Years of Lyndon Johnson is also a bonus book if you want to read it. It is also by Robert Caro. It is also 4,000 pages long. It is a series of 4 books. Each one of them are 4,000 pages long. It tracks the rise and fall and rise again of Lyndon Johnson. And again, goes into a lot of the themes that we were talking about today, about how to deal with how government works, how to deal with politics, how to shape a career. And most importantly, with Lyndon Johnson, the dramatic kinds of changes and the dramatic kinds of impact you can make on the world throughout your career, not just when he was president or a Senate politician, but when he was a local elected official and the kinds of changes that he made in Texas. He brought electricity to all of rural Texas, just as a congressperson, which is something that, you know, in the end of the day, is really profound and really impactful for those families. And so I encourage you to take a look at this reading list. These are things that I still read today. When I feel lost or I feel like I need some guidance, these are the things that I pitch on. I think it's something that is really profound, at least for me. So with that, I want to thank Tony and the rest of the team for having me today. It was a pleasure to meet all of you. Feel free. I think the last slide is still my contact information. Yes, the contact information I should not share with people, but the last slide is still my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Again, want to be helpful. It's a community where we all have to kind of bind together. I think that this webinar is a great opportunity to do that and was really well done. And I really appreciate it. Back to you.